Hey there, this is Danny with Patrick Adair Supplies, here to make the October ring box. This month is the Onyx Nightmare. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and open up this month's subscription box. So the first thing we'll notice is we have our 10-pack of mixing vials, which is going to be perfect for mixing up all the different colors that we're going to be using today. So this will be really helpful. Next up we have our color pigments. So this month we have our gunmetal gray, which is just kind of a dark gray, which will give it a nice spooky vibe, because we're going for kind of a stormy, spooky, eerie ring for Halloween. Then we have this swamp green, which is kind of a nice muted, eerie looking green, which will also add to that kind of Halloween vibe. Next up, let's go ahead and see what we have in the ring box. So this month we're going to be using a black ceramic double channel ring. This is going to be cool to work with because we can kind of mix and match and create some really unique looks for this ring. Then we have our neon green glow powder. So this one glows a really nice vibrant green, but it also has a really nice vibrant green daytime color. So everything about it is just really bright, and it's going to be fun to work with as well. It'll really contrast well with the swamp green, which is much more muted. Then we have just our classic green glow powder. So we're going to be mixing that in with our swamp green and our gunmetal gray. So that will add a nice pop to this ring as well. Next up we have our copper. So copper shavings are fun to work with. They add a cool metallic look to your ring. So this will be fun to work with because it's going to contrast and look really bright compared to our daytime colors. So it's going to be a nice vibrant brown metallic color. Then we have our onyx green opal. This opal is really cool. It's a really dark black most of the time, and then when it catches the light it gives off a really nice bright green color. It's a cool one to work with because of that, because it can stay so muted until it catches the light. And finally we have emerald. Emerald is fun to work with because it's just a nice gemstone. This emerald is a little bit more muted, as you can see. Some of them are going to be a lot more vibrant, but the emerald will just add a little bit of green flare and pop compared to our neon green and our swamp green. So all of this combined is going to create a really nice Halloween themed ring for us. The first thing that we are going to do today is going to be to crush our emerald. Since we are using a double channel ring, we just want to make sure that all of our materials are small enough that they will fit inside of the ring channels. So I make sure to crush everything pretty fine, starting with the emerald. Next up, we're going to crush our onyx green opal. Just make sure once again that it's a nice fine, not quite powder, but pretty small pieces. Lastly, we are going to crush our copper bits just a little bit. They're already pretty small, but we're just going to make sure to kind of flatten them to make sure that they do fit down into the channel, because sometimes since they are round or curvy, they won't quite fit into the channel if you don't squish them a little bit. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and mix the materials that we've crushed up into a vial. We want this ring to just have a pretty natural look to it, and we want to have a good mix of everything just throughout the ring. So we're going to combine them so that they are randomly distributed throughout the ring. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and mix our daytime color pigments with our glow powders. So our first one is our swamp green with our green glow powder. This is a really cool color. I was excited to work with this one because it's a really nice muted green, and it kind of gives off a spooky vibe. So this was a fun color to use. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and mix our gunmetal gray with our green glow powder as well. This is kind of a classic for any ring that we want to have kind of a dark and spooky theme. It just is a nice color. It's not too dark and it's not too light. It just kind of has a nice contrasting stormy background look to it. So I think it's nice to work with, and sometimes it kind of gives off a little bit of a sparkle if it catches the light right. It could just be me, but I feel like those are the reasons I like to work with it. Okay, so just a warning right here. I did end up changing a little bit what I did. I originally mixed the crushed material in with the color pigments, and then I realized that this was a mistake. It just wasn't going to allow the right density, I guess, of materials in the ring. So forewarning, I do this in the video, and I start off doing it, and then I realize my mistake and switch back to having the materials in a separate vial from the color pigments, just to make sure that we really can have enough of our crushed materials in this ring. We didn't want it to look too sparse, so just hold off on following step by step right here. I did realize my mistake, but it is an important step to see, because maybe you do want to do it that way. I just decided that that wasn't the way I wanted to make the ring. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and start our inlay process. As you can see in the video, this is where I realized my mistake. I add a little bit of medium CA to one side, and then I add the color pigment and material mix, and then I just realized it's not gonna work making the ring that way. So I regroup and come back to it in a couple of minutes, but that's where I realized the mistake. So save yourself some time and material and do it the right way. All right, so the inlay process is fairly simple. We're gonna use little dabs of our medium CA adhesive just to let it kind of spread throughout the ring. I'm gonna put the material mix down, and then I'm gonna lock it into place with the color pigment. So on this first side, I'm using the gunmetal gray with the green glow just to lock in everything. And then I go all the way around the ring, adding the material and locking it in with the color pigment. And then I'm gonna add dabs of our super thin CA adhesive, and I'm going to splash some of the swamp green and some of the neon green color pigments on top of the gunmetal. And I'm just gonna repeat that process right there a couple of times until I fill up this side, switching between the gunmetal and then the two green color pigments. When I've filled that side up, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the other side of the ring. And for this side, I used the swamp green as kind of my base color was the idea. So I used the medium CA adhesive once again. I kind of added small dabs of that and let it run through the inlay channel, and then I filled it with the crushed materials and covered it up, locked it into place with the swamp green. After we went all the way around that inlay channel, filling it in with the materials and the swamp green, I added a little bit of super thin CA adhesive and added some splashes of our neon green color pigment. And for me, I really liked the look of the neon green contrasting with the swamp green and the gunmetal gray. It made it look almost like kind of a goo or ooze was just kind of like coming out of the materials. It added a little bit more of that kind of icky, spooky, eerie feel and theme that we were going for. So I really liked having just splashes of the neon green throughout the ring. All right, once we've filled up both channels with the color pigments in the material, go ahead and wet the whole thing down with super thin just to make sure that you've saturated all of the color pigment. This just helps have a more consistent color when you finish, and then spray the whole thing with accelerator to allow it to cure quickly. Once we've allowed our ring to adequately cure so that we're not going to have any inlay materials rip out of the ring, we're going to go ahead and start with our Dremel. So I just use an 80 grit Dremel bit, and I kind of just go to town. Start dremeling the whole thing down. Make sure to use some water so that you can cool down the copper pieces. If they overheat, they will kind of melt the C adhesive and just rip out of the ring, and it can cause a little bit of discoloration if it melts it as well. So make sure you use plenty of water and just spin the ring as you go. Don't focus in on one spot for too long. Once the whole ring is flush, I'm gonna go ahead and just do a quick 220 sand just to even out the color, uncover any air bubbles that we might have, and just to make sure that I like the look of the ring before we go too far into the finishing process. I just do a quick sand because it gives me a better idea of how the ring's gonna look. After that quick 220 sand, we're gonna go ahead and fill the air bubbles and pockets pigment. I used this one just because like I said, I really like the look of the green kind of oozing out of the background. If you want to use a different color, go ahead, but I used the neon green color pigment here. Once that cures and the C adhesive is no longer wet or tacky, we're gonna go ahead and start our hand sanding process to finish up this ring. So I always start with 220, move on to 500, then 1000, and then 1200 grit sandpaper. And I do a really nice wet sand just because it cuts down on dust and it helps it not burn your ring. If it overheats, you can melt the C adhesive and discolor your ring. So I always do a lot of water and a wet sand. Save your ring and save your fingers a little bit. Okay, the final step today is going to be to polish up our ring. So I'm gonna add our step 2 Astrotech polish to a paper towel and then spin it against the ring. And it just creates a really nice shiny finish for our ring. And I think it really helps bring out the best of the copper and the opals. And as you can see, this ring ended up looking pretty cool despite some of the different hiccups and road bumps we had along the way. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think the Onyx green opal ended up having a little bit more red in it than I expected, but I think that looks really cool next to the copper. I'm happy with how the neon green plays against the swamp green and the gunmetal gray. I think those sections really pop where we had the swamp green and the neon green. I think this really looks kind of like the swamp thing, or like a goo is oozing out of the ground, maybe like a toxic waste. I don't know. I think it looks really cool. It has a nice spooky vibe and feeling to it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, hope you liked that as much as I did. It was a super fun ring to make. It's always fun working with the double channel inlay rings, and I really think we did a good job bringing to life the Onyx Nightmare and making a kind of spooky, eerie looking ring. Hope you guys enjoyed.